Tobi Ogundiran. His book is called In the Shadow of the Fall. And with a name like Tobi Ogundiran, you know, well, he's probably not from Pontotoc. And in fact, he's not. It is Lagos, Nigeria is where he grew up, and then found himself at this wonderful creative writing program we have here at the University of Mississippi, the Master of Fine Arts program. Published author from Nigeria, spent 7 years in Russia, also a musician, and get this, a medical doctor, and I can't wait to talk about this thing I got in my neck. Y'all please welcome Tobi Ogundiran.
All right.
You are one accomplished dude.
Yeah, I know. It's growing up African, growing up Nigerian. Yeah, it's
Man, we'll get to the medical doctor part of it in all of your travels, but I want to talk about some of the characters in this book because it really is wonderfully written. This is a duology. This is the first story in a proposed 2 stories.
That's correct.
Novella size, very kind of not novel size, but longer than a short story. We all know what a novella is. So this is part 1 of it, and it's a fantasy world. Even more so than Oxford, y'all. Real fantasy stuff. Ashante, am I saying her name right? Ashake is our heroine, and she is mad because she keeps, this is the layman's terms for it. She's mad because she keeps getting passed over for a promotion, so she rebels. Is that what happens?
pretty much, yeah.
And suffers the consequences. Tell us about Ashake.
So Shaka is an acolyte at the temple. She's training to become a priestess of the Yoruba gods. So basically, the idea behind the story is that, you know, we all know Norse gods and Greek gods. You know, they're pretty popular in pop culture. And I thought, why not also, you know, tell the story about Yoruba gods, which are the gods of, you know, the West African tribe, Yoruba people, equally as cool, you know, if not more cool, you know, than those gods. And so, yeah, she's training to become a priest of one of these gods, and for some reason, unlike her peers, unlike her juniors, she's been unable to graduate to become a full priestess, and she decides to take matters into her own hands.
She resists, is what she does.
Yes, she does. Yeah.
Did you have any pause? She's such a strong character, but I've noticed we have particular male authors who are taking this plunge and write female protagonists. Did you have any pause at all? Because she comes off very naturally.
Well, thank you. No, not at all. It was only natural that the character was going to be female. We've read, you know, countless, for those of you who are fantasy readers, there's like, you know, countless boy wizards and chosen ones who are all males, and I felt, you know, flipping the typical narrative on its head was something that's, you know, was going to be interesting and received well. But also, it felt natural to the story I was trying to tell, that it was going to be a female character, and yeah, that's pretty much what I was thinking.
So you have taken West African myths and legends along with your own invention and sort of mixed them. Some of the aspects of this book are actually part of the Yoruba religion, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So what I've basically done is taken, so the book can be described as inspired by, right? So I've taken real world aspects of the Yoruba culture, but also invented my own stuff, because fantasy, why not? And welded everything together to create a story.
I don't read a whole lot of fantasy, near as much as I should, I guess. And I guess I was expecting like Star Wars and sort of robots and But this is.
I think you're talking about sci-fi.
Yeah, I think that's right. This a lot of this takes place in the forest. There's rivers. It's more like Lord of the Rings type setting.
Yes.
Very rural in some spots.
Pretty much. So this is a secondary world creation, which basically means, you know, it doesn't exist. It's a world I've created that sort of mirrors ours, but it's not an actual real place. It's more inspired by pre-colonial West African culture, cosmology, but also the environment, as you've aptly noticed. You know, lots of trees and rivers and just nature. Yeah.
You've even got the griots who, you know, they're some of the best characters, favorite characters in the book, because they're so nice and welcoming to Ashante when I help her. My thought of griots are New Orleans, voodoos. Again, I don't get out much. But they're on boats. They're on these massive boats. I never thought of griots on boats.
Well, all right. So as you all know, griots exist, right, in the real world. But again, I've included some creative liberties. Let's say that. You know, the griots don't it's fantasy, right? They don't actually live in boats. The West African griots are what we call the history keepers, the storytellers. As most of you probably know, African history before colonialism was largely oral, so written text did not really exist. So the griots are families, you know, whole lineages who keep the history of the people. And they've got really good memories. And the way they do this is weave the stories into songs. And we all know how catchy songs can be. You find yourself singing a song and you don't really realize when you learn the song, when you know the lyrics. So that's kind of the mechanics the griots use in keeping history, but also telling the stories of, you know, certain peoples and all that.
Yeah, they're a wonderful group, and you write about them really, really well. It really draws you in. I do want to ask you about being a medical doctor. When did you finish medical school?
2021. That's when I graduated as a medical doctor.
And where was the school located?
Russia.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
All right. How did you get from Nigeria to Russia?
How did I get
medical school? And we've only got about 3 hours left, so.
Yeah. Well, it happened. Well, I had a friend from high school who started medical school in Russia, and at that point, I started school in Nigeria. I was in my first year of medical school, and we got to talking, and she was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool over here. Why don't you come join me?"
Yeah.
That's
it was as simple as that.
Simple as that. Yeah.
Wow. And then from Russia to Oxford, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Were you like kidnapped or what? How did that happen? You put a hood over your head, next thing you know,
that's what happened. I blame Tom Franklin.
So many stories start that way. I met Tom Franklin, and Tom was in Russia as a double agent at the time. How do you find Oxford after such travels from Nigeria to Russia? How was Oxford for you, treating you?
Treating me well, yeah, no complaints whatsoever so far. It's, small town, pretty different to what I've been used to, because I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, which I like to say is like New York on steroids, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So coming to Oxford, small town, everyone's pretty chill, people are friendly. Yeah, it's been nice.
That should be one of our slogans. Come to Oxford. We're pretty chill. You're also a musician. You could get up here with these Yalobushwhackers. What are the instruments you play?
I play keyboard, drums, and guitar. I'm trying to learn that.
And I also saw where you have some buddies here in Oxford who also speak Russian. Y'all get together and speak Russian, right? Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I speak Russian.
You speak?
It's a total lie. One big lie. All right, the second book in this duology will come out in January of 2025.
Yeah.
And boy, you do leave it as a cliffhanger of all cliffhangers. I mean, literally there are open doors and people, I don't want to say it. But you have quite a fan base, and people are eating this stuff up. Do you think maybe Game of Thrones and some of those shows have sort of made the fantasy field more larger and expanded the audience?
I mean, nerd culture, which is what, fantasy and sci-fi and Star Wars, is really mainstream culture now, right? Game of Thrones, the whole Star Wars franchise, and whatnot. So I feel, it's always good for people to embrace these stories and not frown down on them as they used to be in the past. I'm excited, and the readers are excited.
Oh man, you've got quite the following. And I also read or heard in one of your interviews, Stephen King is a big influence on you.
Oh yeah.
And when you were in, I don't know, middle school or you with his novel Misery.
Yeah, Misery.
Tell us what you did with Misery.
So basically in middle school, I guess we'll call it middle school, my first ever King novel was Misery, and I found it in the school library. And for some reason, we weren't allowed to take books out of the library. So what I did was take the Misery book out of the fiction section, and I hid it somewhere else, so no one would find the book. So I'd always go to the library, in the special place I hid Stephen King, read a couple of pages, hide it back there.
Yeah. You like hid it in the self-help section or something. That's perfect. Actually, I bet many of you have done that. I actually recall doing that. It wasn't Stephen King. We do want to hear you read a little bit, if you don't mind. Just give us a taste of this great story. And we've got such a beautiful accent. They're tired of hearing old backwater hillbilly. Again, it is called In the Shadow of the Fall. It is a wonderful read. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy. This very, very popular book, but we're going to hear a little bit from it now. Tobi Ogundiran, y'all.
So I'm going to read a short section which introduces the main antagonist, the villain of the series. The city of Skagas accosted Yarudin as he stepped off the boat. It stank of fish and night soil and the rank stench of humanity. Hundreds of stalls had sprouted up on the road leading away from the docks, each seller trying to outshout the other as they bellowed about their wares at freshly arrived travelers. The din was maddening, and Yar longed to quiet them. But that would draw too much attention, and if there was one thing the teacher taught, it was to never draw attention. Yar allowed the throng to sweep him off the docks and into the city proper. He remembered the time when it had been little more than a hamlet, a measly collection of hovels lurking in the shadow of the Skagas Mountains, the small folk subsisting on what they could barter from the cane sugar farms. Now, broad thoroughfares lined the city, buildings of stone and baked earth towering high into the sky. This was not the Skagas Yar remembered, but then the world had changed a lot since the fall. The deeper into the city he ventured, the more he felt the pulse, a subtle tugging in his chest like a beacon calling to him. He had felt it ever since he had roused from slumber, and it allowed him to know the location of his brothers and sisters scattered across the 10 kingdoms and beyond. You need a room, Baba? A place to eat? A whore? I know all the good places here, cheap too. A youth of no more than 13 seasons had fallen into step with him. He had the hungry look of an urchin, the sunken but bright eyes that told of a life spent scavenging on the streets. His dashiki was many sizes too small, so that he looked like an insect stuffed into a sack. Yar frowned at the pendants around his scrawny neck, a crudely carved effigy of a hunter and a dog, the symbol of Ogun. I will require a room, said Yar. The boy flashed a grin and nodded. Come with me, Baba. Evening was fast falling, and the denizens of Skagas flooded the streets, some clustering about smoking suya stands, others flocking to taverns. Yar struggled to keep up, and the boy kept looking impatiently over his shoulder, dark eyes sweeping the street as he urged him on. He was leading Yar in a direction opposite to the pulse, so that with each stride, he felt the tugging a little less. What is your name, boy? The youth frowned in suspicion. What's it to you? You do me a great favor. The least I can do is to thank you properly. The boy seemed to consider a moment, then shrugged. Vic. Thank you, Vic. The boy grunted, ushering him ahead. It is just around the corner. Pierre stepped into the alley, whose grimy walls were crawling with wet moss and poorly disposed night soil. A wreckage of old furniture and broken wagon wheels blocked the alley. Should have saved that thanks for later, eh? he heard Vic sneer behind him. "I'll take that sack, old man." Yar turned around to find Vic blocking his path, a dagger at hand. "Are we alone?" "Yes. No one will hear you scream, old man." Yar smiled. "Good. Very good." The boy frowned, as though he could not quite comprehend why Yar was not responding the way he expected. "Do you want to die, old man?" His voice climbed the register. "Drop the sack and fuck off before I open your guts." He squealed as Yar seized him, locking one arm underneath his armpit and twisting the other until he let go of the dagger and it dropped to the ground with a clatter. Then Yar slammed the boy into the wall, pinning him by the neck. He started to whimper, eyes rolling like a spooked horse's. "Thank you, Vig," said Yar softly. "Wait, what are you?" "For this gift of your body." Most bodies Yar took without preamble or warning. Rarely did he grant his prey the grace to know what was coming. And for those he did grant, they never quite understood exactly what it was. "Please," tears licked down the boy's grimy cheeks. "Just let me go, I'm sorry, please." "In the name of the teacher," Yar muttered, then ate the boy. Asher was an endless thing, the life force that thrummed through every living entity, from the birds of the air to the trees of the forest. And as Yar's spirit rushed out of his body and into the boy's, he saw his Asher, a pale ball of light, flickering about almost like a firefly. Yar rushed towards it, consuming it until there was nothing left of the boy, so that it was as though he had never existed and could never be reincarnated. The boy's memories still remained, trace vestiges of a life that was, that could have been. In any other case, Yar might have kept them, the better to blend in, but there was no need. The boy would not be missed. So he discarded the memories and released himself, taking his new body like bronze, filling the shape of a new cast. Yar opened his eyes to find the old man's hand still wrapped around his throat. He pushed him away, and the lifeless body crumpled to the floor. He was taken aback at the sight of the old man, the sparse white hair, the deep-lined skin, sugared like dried fruit. A body was simply a thing to be worn and discarded once it had outlived its usefulness, like an old frayed cloth. Yar searched himself for any trace of remorse and found none. Such base emotions were beyond him now. There was only the work, there was only service to the teacher, and he would see that to its end. 3 urchins stood at the mouth of the alley, gaping in frozen horror. Vic's cronies, no doubt. This was where they lured the victims and divvied up their spoils. "Vig is no more," said Yar. "Go." They looked in his eyes and did not see anything they recognized. "Go," he repeated. They scattered, hyenas fleeing before lions. Yar let them go, repressing the urge to give chase. Killing them served no purpose, and besides, he was not unkind. "Always let gentle mercy temper the fires of your wrath," the teacher taught. In that, there is balance. Thank you.
Tobi Ogundiran, y'all.
All right.
Good job. Thank you, Tobi. In the Shadow of the Fall is the book from Tor Publishing, and Tobi will join us after the show and sign copies and visit some more. He's in his 3rd and final year at the Masters of Fine Arts Creative Writing Program at the University of Mississippi, so we'll be losing Tobi. He'll be running out to the big world, and we wish him the best. Fine writer and a great guy. One more time for him, if y'all don't mind. Tobi Ogundiran.